It felt like such a harmless resolution. Everyone makes them, after all. I simply wanted a new me for the new year. Last year had been a joke in every sense of the word. With quarantine, we had been locked down inside for months. The city nearly shut down completely. But we had all been a little hopeful at the beginning that we could use this time to our advantage. I would use it to better myself. I'd learn a new skill. I'd write my book. I'd never go back to my crappy job again. In that time of uncertainty, we all settled in with high hopes of coming out with something better than we'd started. Turns out, I only managed one of those things. I would never go back to my crappy job because I was laid off halfway through the year. I spent the next 6 months wallowing in self-pity, watching Netflix and adding quarantine weight to my belt. My exercise plan went by the wayside. My plans to better myself didn't seem to matter. And as my wife started her new job at the grocery store, her job had also let her go, I settled into depression like a crab in its shell. As I sat on the couch, one show after another rolling past, I saw little reason to do much of anything. When Christmas rolled around, I realized it had been 9 months since I'd done anything of value, and that was when the depression set in. I spent Christmas morning in a funk, sitting in my sweatpants and watching our kids open their meager gifts. My wife sat in the armchair opposite me, looking tired but happy with the gifts she had gotten them. She'd bought everything, paid for everything, because I was too lazy and unmotivated to do much of anything. Every now and then, I would catch these little looks from her, little disappointed looks tinged with sadness. All I could do was wallow in my sadness, though, not sure what I could do to change it. When New Year's came, I just stayed in bed. I didn't feel worthy to join the others for their midnight toasts or their energetic countdowns. As I heard them count down, I closed my eyes and felt myself make more of a wish than a resolution. 5, I wanted a new me for the new year. 4, a better me. 3, for them. 2, someone they could be proud of. 1, someone who wouldn't let them down. Happy New Year! I dozed off to the sound of them ringing in the new year, hoping I would awake to find that I'd found the strength to make my resolution a reality. I woke up to the smell of eggs and bacon, pancakes and syrup, and hearty laughter from downstairs. They had started breakfast without me. The first breakfast of the year was a tradition of ours. Why wouldn't they? I hadn't exactly been there the last few months. Why would now be any different? Why not now? Why not make good on my resolution? I got dressed in something other than sweatpants and came downstairs to the laughter of my family. Someone was sitting at the head of the table, though, telling a story that had all of them in stitches, and I felt a little miffed as I came to the foot of the stairs. Who was this guy? He sounded a little familiar, but I couldn't place him right away. They hadn't woken me up to eat, and now there was some stranger in my house. What the hell was going on? Lisa, why didn't you tell me we had company? But Lisa said nothing. She had eyes only for this charismatic stranger who was sitting in my chair. Brad? Janet? Did anyone save me any pancakes? I'm as hungry as... So glad you woke up to make these pancakes this morning, dear, Lisa said, raising her orange juice glass to the man at the head of the table. What can I say? The guy said, and as I moved around to confront him, I took a step back in surprise. I was as hungry as a bear this morning. It was me. I was sitting at the head of the table. I was still the same as I was now, but I looked different somehow. My face was shaved, my hair was cut down from the greasy tangles it was now, and I had dressed in some normal clothes. I was wearing an apron, smudged with flour and speckled with grease. More than that, though, I seemed to exude a healthy glow. I was a mess, but I could get better. I was filled with an energy that let people know I was changed. I was full of vigor, full of life, full of pep. I kept yelling at them as they ate, trying to get someone's attention, but they all just kept eating, kept laughing, kept living as though I didn't exist. I made a joke then, my family's laughter the backdrop for the screams that came ripping up my throat as I slowly lost my mind. When he picked up their plates and walked them to the kitchen, I followed him. I kept jabbering at the back of his head, the catharsis the only thing that mattered now. I asked him what the hell he thought he was doing. I yelled at him to get out of my house and leave my family alone, and to stop pretending to be me. He stood there, washing dishes as I screamed at him, and when I was done, he just laughed. "When are you gonna wake up? I'm you now," he said, turning around to look at me, my own face smiling back in the face of my confusion, "and I have no intention of going anywhere." I took a step away from him, my anger turning to confusion. What are you?" I gasped, backing into the counter as I tried to get away from this strange homunculus. "I'm you, the best you, and soon I'll be the only you." I stayed for about a month just to watch over them, just to watch him. He was the perfect husband, though, the perfect father, the perfect man. He went to my son's Little League games. He went to my daughter's band recitals. He remembered my wife's birthday, remembered her favorite food, and he made time for her every day. He got out and found a job working at a warehouse, and after a month they talked about making him an assistant manager. He cooked dinners and read bedtime stories, and was the husband and father that my family deserved. And I was there to watch it all as my family gathered around him and became the focal point once again. After a month of living like a ghost in my own house, I left and never looked back. I began to walk one day and just didn't stop for a while. I expected to disappear, to stop existing, but I found that the opposite was true. The farther I walked, the more I began to feel alive again. I hadn't noticed while I'd been watching my family live with this strange man, but I hadn't felt the urge to eat or drink that whole time. The farther I moved from my house, the more I realized I was becoming hungrier and thirstier. I had brought my wallet with me out of habit, and the cheeseburger and fries I bought tasted heavenly. I was able to use my debit card and my credit card for a little while, but after a few months they stopped working, and I was forced to work odd jobs in order to feed and clothe myself. By some stroke of luck, I had purchased some things I would need to survive in my new homeless lifestyle before my credit card was turned off. It wasn't much, but it helped me get far enough away from my old home that people could see me again. It's proximity that seemed to trigger it. At least that's what Malcolm thinks. Sorry, I got a little ahead of myself there. About 6 months ago, a year into my journey, I met a homeless guy at a soup kitchen, and we started talking about our past lives. I told him how I'd left my family, making it sound like my wife had left me for another man, but he just smiled and shook his head. He said he had a similar story, his wife leaving him for someone else, but it wasn't just anyone. She left me for another me, just like your wife. I was speechless, but when I asked how he could know that, he told me a very familiar story. Malcolm had been a company man. He had worked long hours, holidays, birthdays, missing most of the important memories from his child's lives. One of those special events was a particular vacation where his son had drowned while he was at a board meeting. His wife and daughters were distraught. John had been the baby of his family, and they had all doted on him. But Malcolm had only thrown himself harder into his work to hide his grief. One night, New Year's Eve actually, his wife had come to him and said that she felt like she was in a shell of a marriage and that she needed a partner more than a bank account. I stood looking down from my office on the 12th floor and let my grief wash over me at last. I wished for a better me, for the man my wife deserved, and I suppose I got it. When I woke up at my desk the next day, I was like Ebenezer Scrooge after the ghosts had come to visit him. I rushed home, wanting to apologize for never being there for them, but I was already there. I was sitting at the table. I was talking with them and telling them that I was going to turn over a new leaf. And when I saw myself looking through the window, I just smiled at me with the biggest shit-eating grin I could muster. Malcolm, the new Malcolm, had sold his shares of the company, giving ownership to the board, and left a rich man. He had taken Malcolm's family away, moving somewhere he could retire and show them the attention they deserved. Malcolm had never seen them again. He had haunted his empty house for a few months, unsure of where they had gone, but eventually the cops had come and found him squatting there. They could see me again, now that my family was gone, and they rousted me from the house. I told them who I was, but they just laughed at me and told me to keep dreaming. I showed them my ID, my credit cards, and they threw me in jail, believing I was a thief. I spent 3 years in prison for petty theft before getting out and hitting the road. That was 20 years ago, and I've been on the move ever since. I travel with Malcolm now. We found 2 others since we set out, too. They seem drawn to us somehow. Our shared grief and sense of strangeness seems to call to them. They both have similar stories, similar wishes, and it seems that their wishes also came true. So give some thought before you wish for a new self in the new year. Your new self may just make your old self obsolete. Good evening, everyone. It's me, Dr. Plague. Thank you so much for joining me for tonight's story. Well, I hope you're enjoying a New Year's story tonight. It's just about that time of the year, and I thought we'd all benefit from maybe thinking a little harder about our New Year's resolutions this year. I hope one of your resolutions will be to read more in the new year, and how better to accomplish it than by picking up one of my books on Amazon. Before we go, though, let's go ahead and thank our sponsors. Thanks to Leslie Lou Riddle for being our Spooky Skeleton tier contributor. Thanks, Leslie. We just couldn't do it without you. If you too would like to support the show, come on down to Patreon. For just $5 a month, you too can have your name read out at the end of every YouTube and every TikTok that I do. And as always, thanks for stopping by. Dr. Plague, signing off. Have a wonderful evening and a spooky new year.